Welcome to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Yeah, it looks like Brexit Part 2. Outside of the Jacob Javits Center in Manhattan. Huge upset in the making. Not quite called it completely, but Trump looks like the big winner. Stacey.
Max, we're outside the Jacob Javits Center on the west side of Manhattan. All of the media has abandoned the location because it looks like we have a President Trump. President Trump has won. We saw that when we were looking at MSNBC. We saw Rachel Maddow's face, and I forget that other presenter, his face. They looked very sad.
Well, mainstream media took an enormous hit this election. We found out through the WikiLeaks that mostly the Democratic operatives are in bed with many in the mainstream. They feed them debate questions. They are crafting an outcome to an election. They're not journalists. People criticize other countries for having so-called state-run media. They say, well, America's free. However, we've seen in this election now that America's media is state-run. It's run by the rich. It's run by the bankers. That's who runs the media. Very little independent media. Some independent media outlets like Alex Jones in Austin, Texas, have come out looking smart. I mean, is Alex Jones going to be the communications director in the new White House? He'll come out every day to do the daily press briefing? I hope so.
Well, also importantly, let's remember that the location that Hillary had chosen to be her headquarters for what she thought she was going to accept the nomination for presidency. She did not think that she would be conceding Trump to win the presidency. The Jacob Javits Center is the heart of New York corruption. It is location is famous for the Genovese crime family, basically controlling all contracts that built this between 1980 and 1986. Rudy Giuliani, who's in a great position to be part of the Trump cabinet and the Trump administration, because there are very few people in good position to be in the Trump administration, by the way, because all but Giuliani, Christie, his children and his wife, and a few others, Mike Pence, stood behind him. The entire RNC abandoned him. But here, there was a pay-for-play situation going on with the DNC. Those emails that you talk about that referred to the corruption of the media, where CNN and MSNBC were receiving notes from the DNC about how to make Hillary win against the will of the people so that Bernie would not be the candidate who many say now would have beaten Donald Trump.
Well, when you have vested interests running politics and finance in America, the same group of people that we find out through WikiLeaks are both supporting ISIS. Hillary Clinton supporters are supporting ISIS. Hillary Clinton supporting ISIS.
Now, the financiers, it was Saudi Arabia financing both of them.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's the kind of damage that you're talking about. People finally put that into their nut, and they think, you know what, maybe we need to get rid of this entrenched oligopoly and kleptocracy, and we're ready to go for the scorched earth. We're ready to try something new.
So the other interesting thing is that Donald Trump, as we speak, is, accepting the nomination for presidency. He's over at the Hilton, Midtown Hilton, not too far from the Trump Tower, low rent, not this glitzy sort of $1 million spent on fireworks, and huge, cow of a building and corruption. So we're going to go over to earlier today. We were with Mitch Firestein at the Trump Tower.
So we have a President Trump, but being a man of the people, he won't accept his presidency here at Trump Tower, but over at the Hilton.
Make America great again.
I'm so excited, Mitch. We're going to see America be made great again by a great American success story.
Yeah, well, I mean, there it is. Donald Trump won the election, and it's just like Brexit. People are fed up, and in the last chapter of Planet Ponzi, my book, I talk about this exact phenomenon. You can push people far and far enough, but when it comes to the end of the road, he's opened the kimono of Washington's cesspool of corruption, and it wasn't La Perla that they were wearing underneath. It was absolutely Halloween 15. So there you go.
It was crotchless chaps from the Village People shoot 1975. So you mentioned this idea that he was able to now embark on this journey, make America great again, and I truly believe that that will be the case. The biggest loser in all this was the media. What do you think?
Yeah, there were winners and losers in both of this. Obviously, the biggest winners were liberty and democracy. So what Donald Trump has done is he's exposed the fraud widespread systemic corruption throughout Washington, and that has to be dealt with, and we will deal with it, instead of it just going forward and moving on and sweeping every little thing under the carpet. Now, the FBI, the Department of Justice under Loretta Lynch, is so politicized, we need change. So the biggest losers, Max, I couldn't agree with you more. CNN was disgraceful the way that they handled the entire election, from handing out the debate questions in advance to having only one side of a story.
Yeah, the media leper colony, as it is, the one with the most fingers appears to be Fox News, you know, so to speak. Well, RT, of course, setting the standards because of their connection to WikiLeaks and all the reveals that came out, Julian Assange, etc. But, you know, you look at the big picture. You mentioned Brexit earlier. We've been talking about the global insurrection against banker occupation now for a number of years. A lot of countries are trying to break free from the occupation of the banksters. Egypt, the Arab Spring, Black Lives Matter, all these things are connected. With the Trump presidency, do you think this finally is going to kick the teeth out of those banksters and kleptocrats that have ruled for a couple of decades now?
Well, you know, I think what's happened is we're seeing a big change. People are fed up with it. The 99% are fed up with it, which is good. And they're actually moving with their vote and with their feet, and they're marching, and they're saying, we're not going to take this anymore, which is significant. It's a significant change. The tide has moved, and it's shifted away from the political narrative that's been put forward by 99% of the media. You know, the statistic was 97% of media donations went to Hillary Clinton in this campaign. So no matter how hard they tried, and no matter what they did, they still ended up losing the election. That speaks a lot. It speaks volumes about the sea changes that are going on in America.
So let's talk about the fundamental difference that was between these two candidates. Hillary Clinton is now conceding at the Javits Center. How does the Javits Center compare to the Hilton? What is that fundamentally telling you about these candidates?
Well, the Javits Center was heavily subsidized by some political pay-to-play, where the government, somebody got a stack full of Franklins, many stacks full of Franklins, to go and endeavor the project and build that Javits Center, whereas the Hilton was a private family that probably started with very little and then built an empire in the hotel. So it was hard work and putting your shoulder to the grindstone to move forward and move America forward. I mean, what we need to do in this country is address the terrible economy for the past 8 years that the administration and that we hadn't been brought out in any of the debates. What they've done is candy-coated everything, and they said how great employment was. But what they didn't say was that the employment rate is not indicative of the participation rate. There's 95 million unemployed out there, and that is a big, big factor.
No, well, you know, the Midtown experience is Marquee, Broadway, Times Square, Manhattan, New York, whereas the Javits Center is down Lower West Side, Meatpacking District, Jacob Javits Center, Mafia, you know, Union corruption.
The headbusters.
The leg breakers and the head crackers. You know, that's the cashews. You know, this is all about...
The concrete shoes.
Oh yeah, the concrete shoes. Right, well, you know, Hillary would probably be swimming with the fishes soon enough. You know, America is a winner-take-all society. Hillary gets the steak knives. Trump gets the White House. Let's look at the markets, because the markets are responding. And of course, the peso, Mexican peso, new all-time low against the dollar, down 20%. What's really fascinating to me is that the Japanese yen is up. You know, the Japanese yen going up is bad for the global economy, because the Japanese yen, as we've reported on for many years, is the source of cheap money for all these markets and all this kind of leveraged Ponzi scheme economics that drives the global economy. And when the yen goes up, it's bad for markets. So I think that this is now going to be the beginning of a new post-neoliberal era. We're going to see rates go higher. We're going to see the yen go higher. We're going to see gold go a lot higher. Bitcoin's going higher. The dollar's crashing. Stocks are crashing. Bonds are crashing. Probably the 30-year bull market in bonds is now over.
Well, that's the thing, is the Dow was down over 800 points in the futures market. This is a change candidate for sure. Donald Trump has changed, because had Hillary Clinton won, things would be the same. So there are some people that we've interviewed over and over here on the KeiserReport who got it right. And one of them over and over was Chris Whalen. And we spoke to him last week, and he predicted Donald Trump would be the president. Here's what he had to say. You voted for Trump? Did you expect him to win? And what did he do right? How is that possible? He didn't have the RNC, he had no support from any official, like, elite. How did this happen?
It was a matter of momentum. It was the Brexit wave that has caused a lot of things to occur. I think Donald Trump, and you're right, I called it back in March, was simply the candidate of change. If it wasn't him, it would have been someone else.
Right, Chris Whalen was dead right. His friend Jim Rickards also right, and I think that our show, who features these guys like Rickards and Whalen, have been talking about Trump in the context of how they are plugged into this global economy, the U.S. economy, and the markets, and they're able to get a good read and filter out the noise. What happens in mainstream media in America is that they're not able to filter out the noise, and they buy into the fiat economy and the nonsense, and they end up reporting nonsense.
Well, he also mentioned the Brexit momentum, and once again, all the polls were wrong about the United States. The polls were wrong about the Brexit vote, and the people gave the big finger to the elites. Here, the same thing. We have commented on this over and over, and the Beltway media just called all of the Americans a basket of deplorables, called them racists and xenophobes and all this sort of stuff. But when we went to North Carolina, an important state for Hillary to win, we saw Trump sign after Trump sign after Trump sign, and still then I doubted my own eyes, because I thought, well, perhaps the pollsters know something that I don't. But it appears there were many shy Trump voters to the pollsters, not in the lawn sort of market, sign market.
Right. Well, Randy Bowler in North Carolina, we spoke to him. He said for Trump to win the White House, it has to go a win through North Carolina. This is how he broke it down.
What went wrong for Hillary?
Well, if we have a president for Trump, it's not what went wrong for Hillary, it's what went wrong for the world. But I mean, if she happens to lose, it's because she didn't win North Carolina and she lost states like Michigan and Ohio.
How did she lose states like Michigan and Ohio?
Well, clearly, if you look at the primary between she and Sanders, issues on trade policy were huge. And you know, her support in the past of NAFTA, for instance, and her husband's support of that, you know, were biting her in the primary. And you have a lot of Reagan Democrats, and you have a lot of disaffected union voters that typically vote for Democrats, but they feel as if they've been sold out by neoliberal economic policies.
So once again, he's pointing out what the WikiLeaks revelations about the Podesta emails and the DNC leaks and everything showed was that the DNC got it wrong, Hillary got it wrong, she was for these trade deals when the population of America was against them.
Right, well, much more coming away after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. We're outside of the Jacob Javits Center on the west side of Manhattan. Oh, looks like a Trump victory. Oh, I can smell it. Oh, it's going to be glorious. Oh, it's fantastic. A lot of data. You know, we live in the age of big data. Everyone looks at big data, and everyone was wrong. But nevertheless, let's look at some data. Stacey.
Well, there were some data about predictions about who might win. They were wrong. The exit data shows what people said and what informed their vote when they went in, and there is actual vote data calculated. Some interesting data. Gary Johnson, who was Libertarian candidate, well, he was currently received the most votes by a third-party candidate since 1996. It was 3.3 million. At midnight, almost 1 o'clock in the morning here. That's quite interesting. A lot of votes that he won. Some people are saying, well, he caused Trump to win, but I would assume that he actually took more votes
I think so, yeah.
from Trump than
yes.
from Hillary. Yeah. So just to show you how poorly Hillary Clinton did against what Barack Obama had done in 2012. Here's to show you the context of just how bad Hillary was in this election. In 2012, Obama won 93% of the black vote. In 2016, Hillary won 88%. Obama won 71% of the Latino vote, and Hillary won just 65%. Now remember, there was that whole get out the vote, the Latino vote in Florida, and we're going to win, because look, the Latino vote in Florida is doubled on 2012 in the early voting. Well, it looks like a lot of them went for Trump, in fact, despite all of the Beltway media telling you that all of his wall sort of building sort of rhetoric would impact that vote negatively.
I'll tell you the data point that really surprised me. Educated women, educated white women, voted for Trump in numbers that were far above expectations. This tells me that the whole episode about Trump's language, where he used untoward language in tapes that were from 20 years ago, really left no impression on women in 2016. None of that language added up to anything that was even insulting. It was just kind of mildly humorous, and that was it. And the women came out and they voted for him because, and they had a chance to vote for a woman. And they decided not to vote for a woman, but to vote for a guy who used some salacious language 20 years ago. That means this just tells me how off base media was in trying to pump up those outtakes from Trump and build that into some horrendous, horrific, misogynistic, disgusting language when it was the women themselves in their heart of hearts knew that it was nothing.
Okay, I'm a woman, so can I tell you what that was all about? Hillary Clinton is the wife of Bill Clinton Incorporated. She's the wife of Bill Clinton. Golda Meir was her own woman. She was the Prime Minister of Israel, the third or fourth Prime Minister of Israel, 1969. Margaret Thatcher did it on her own. She wasn't the wife of somebody. She ruled the UK. Theresa May is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. She's not the wife of somebody. Angela Merkel, same thing. Michelle Bachelet of Chile. Dilma Rousseff in Brazil. There were a lot of women who have achieved, head of state on very powerful nations, BRIC nations, G8 nations, and they have not been the wife of somebody else.
To that point, the day that my mother, 92 years old, who's voted Democrat her entire life, who's been a feminist, when she heard Hillary Clinton suggest that, well, her economic policy will be thrown over to her husband, Bill, who was so great under his presidency, at that moment, her whole expression changed, and she said, wait a minute, forget this woman. She's not really a feminist. She's a fake. I'm not going to vote for her.
Well, earlier today, we spoke to two local New Yorkers, Anthony and Tony, right out here outside the Javits Center about what they would think.
Anthony and Rocco. And Rocky.
Anthony and Rocky, about what they would think of a Trump presidency.
Congratulations, America. We have President Donald Trump. Your thoughts? Oh!
Viva Trump, baby.
Viva
Yes.
Trump! You came prepared for the Trump outcome.
He's like you or Jerry Salenti or Alex Jones being president. You know what I mean? He's against the system. He's like Donnie Brasco infiltrating the mafia. You know, he's coming out. He's going to expose everything. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait for it.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah, well, Anthony, do you agree?
I don't agree. I'm getting ready for Trumpageddon over here. This guy is a disaster. There's no way. I don't understand how the American people can vote for this guy. It's a disgrace.
But he seems like he's got a way to get rid of some of the corruption that we've seen, perhaps.
We'll see. I mean, he's a used car salesman type of guy. I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when I see it.
Charm.
No, I don't. I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, that's it here at the Javits Center. Let's see what's going on earlier today in Times Square.
What we're gonna join the French Foreign Legion, and I heard you had to join for life, like once you get in, you can't get out. But I hear you get paid pretty good, and France, from what I hear, is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, France is quite nice. Lived there myself for many years. You know, people are just made that declaration before this election that if Trump wins, we're going to leave the country, we're going to leave America, and of course they never do. I wonder, Stacey, if this time people who said that they would leave under Trump presidency, if they would leave, of course if they go to France, they'll find that this is a much changed country over the past 5 years with the arrival of extremism and terrorism. Where to go if you leave America?
Well, by the way, to me, this is one of the best things in terms of having a President Trump, is seeing the European leaders who have unanimously dissed Trump, who have said he's a threat to the world, all sorts of stuff. Angela Merkel, who I just mentioned, she said he's a threat to the world and don't vote for him. So I can't wait to see that. I can't wait to see the relationship between Russia and the United States. I'm sure I haven't looked at the news since 12:30 p.m., but I'm sure they're already saying Putin somehow made Trump win. But that's another thing, by the way. Again, you know, Max and I were out in the street in North Carolina. We saw only Trump signs, like 10 Trump signs to 1 Hillary sign. And we thought, well, the pollsters must be right. They must know something that we can't see in front of us. The same thing. Never once in all of our travels through Times Square, through North Carolina, did we hear anybody mention Putin or that this was anything that resonated with them outside the Beltway. That was only something that it was important when we were in Washington, D.C. Never did anybody else care about it.
Yeah, good point. We never heard anyone talk about this Russia connection when we left the bubble of mainstream media in America. And the way that Hillary just cooked up this enormous sourced lie and try to scapegoat a whole country to make up for her shortcomings, that country being Russia. I'm glad to see the American voters saw through that, saw through her insanity, and realized that probably the greatest ally that America could have to fight terrorism and to rebuild some kind of global economy that makes sense is Russia.
So the other interesting thing to look at as we head into a Trump presidency, as we mentioned earlier, is that who is he beholden to? Because okay, he wanted to build the wall, for example, but Raytheon, which is one of the biggest military-industrial corporations in the world and one of the biggest wall builders in the world, they backed Hillary Clinton. They backed the wrong person. No banks backed him, no corporations backed him. The Las Vegas Sheldon Adelson's newspaper backed him. Every single newspaper, every single corporation, every single bank, nobody backed him. So in terms of who backs and who you owe, we did speak to Randy Voller, who was the 4-time mayor of Pittsboro, North Carolina. He was the chairman of the North Carolina Democratic Party, and this is what he had to say about pay to play.
Let me ask you about Barack Obama. You know, his rhetoric pre-election and then almost from day one, he sounded like a puppet of some outside forces. Was that pre-planned? Was that sudden? What happens? Was he naive to think that he wouldn't be completely manipulated from day one? Or am I misperceiving it?
You'd have to. What are you actually?
In other words,
asking
his
here,
cabinet.
Max?
We know that
more.
Citibank appointed his cabinet. We know that they immediately bailed out Wall Street. We know that this put billions and hundreds of billions into the pockets of the worst serial financial criminals in America. And Barack Obama, his only defense was, we've got to put the past in the past. Let's not put anyone in jail. Even though previously, during the S&L crisis, 1,500 bankers went to jail, and it was very healthy for the financial system and set the stage for another period of growth. So he appeared to be utterly in the pocket of the bankers, but his rhetoric pre-election, of course, gave the impression that he was going to bring change. So my question is, was he taken into a back room, as some speculate, that when you become president, essentially they take you into the back room and they educate you about who's really in charge, and this is really the reality of a president, and or is that just what do you think? Is that a theory, a conspiracy theory?
Well, let me just tell you from a personal story the reality of being an elected official, whether you're a local elected official or you're the president. At some point when you win, there are those that are going to be invested in your position. And so when I won my first election by a mere 11 votes on election day and beat an incumbent that they said I couldn't beat, one of the first calls I got was from a lobbyist representing a very powerful utility called Progress Energy that controls, a giant nuclear plant that's, within our jurisdiction, very, right here on the line in Chatham County. And of course now they're merged with Duke Energy, one of the biggest energy providers in North America, perhaps the world. So I say this to say to you that on the level of president, there are going to be players that are going to suddenly say, you're part of our team, Max, you're part of our team, Barack. And instead of the team being the American people, the team is essentially the business community. It's the folks that are established. It's the folks that have the money invested. So
okay, but in the past, in America, there have been presidents who have taken on those special interests. Teddy Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, for name two.
One of those ended up assassinated.
Okay, but that's kind of another story. But is Barack Obama, in my view, he failed as a leader because he couldn't overcome those pressures, and therefore he's a failure.
Well, the two people that you point out also came from money. JFK, of course, that was new money that Joe Kennedy made, and of course Teddy Roosevelt was old money. And then you could have said FDR. They took on Wall Street after the crash.
Isn't that an argument for Donald Trump then?
Is that an argument for Donald Trump? I guess that's the argument that his people would make, that he can't be bought or sold, and you know, even though I don't agree with him, he does actually point out and say things that I think need to be said.
Right, toward the end there, I started getting my shots in against Randy Bowler, making my case for Trump, and he didn't have really great answers, because we've got a situation here in America where they've turned the Etch-a-Sketch upside down, and they've shaken it. That's right. It's now a complete, clean slate. Trump's beholden to no one. There's been a few winners. Pence, Alex Jones, KeiserReport, Max and Stacy, RT,
Rudy Giuliani.
That's it. Everyone else is a loser. Stacy.
Not I. I'm not the loser. But yes, it's a remarkable situation. We didn't expect this, but I think it was quite telling. Ultimately, the fundamentals of the two characters of these candidates was the Javits Center versus the Hilton, and I think that said everything, and that's what the people decided.
Well, it's been great, this special election coverage on the Keiser Report, Stacy. Till next time. Bye,
Make
y'all.
America great again.